Welcome, Chameleon Academy, to this wonderful Saturday morning. And today we are going to go over 5 easy steps to create a floating garden style cage for your chameleon. And I've been wanting to do this video for a while because the steps to provide a chameleon what they need in a cage are actually pretty simple. The reason most people aren't able to do it or show up without it and being done is because they haven't been told these simple steps. And yes, they're simple. This isn't just a slick sales pitch. You just have to know what they are. And if this is the first time you've come to the Chameleon Academy, this is actually part of a daily vlog. And so if you like chameleons, then there is a daily video here on the Chameleon Academy that is all about chameleons. In fact, a bunch of us get together at 5 a.m. Pacific in the morning for the first showing of each vlog, where there's a live chat and we all say hello to each other and start the day off right. But you didn't come here for all sorts of flowery speech. You came here to figure out how to create a floating garden style cage for your chameleon. And I got it down to 5 steps. Is it 5 because that's what YouTube likes? Is it 5 because I spent too much time with Adam Wickens? I don't know. It's just a coincidence, but there's 5 steps. So first I want to go to some prerequisites. Let's get some ground rules out of the way. First of all, what is a floating garden style? A floating garden is where the plants and branches are lifted up, and so they're in the mid-range, mid to top range of your cage, and that's where your chameleon wants to be. Putting things on the bottom of the cage, that's not where the chameleon wants to be. And so you're going to need something on the walls of your cage that you can lash branches and potted plants onto. In my case, in the cages back here, I have Dragon Strand dragon ledges. This is a product that actually I invented, and I created it specifically so we could do this floating garden style. They are a set of branch anchors that attach to the sides and back of your typical screen cage. And what they do is they transfer the weight and stress of the branches and pots inside the cage to the aluminum frame, bypassing the screen, which is not meant to be load-bearing. So we're not going to be ripping the screen. If you have a hybrid cage, you have more options open to you because you can just screw things into the wall. The important thing is that either you get dragon ledges, you DIY something, which can be as simple as just leaning a branch diagonally across the whole side of the cage and lashing it to the aluminum frame. Just don't attach it to the screen. So you don't have to spend a lot of money, but you do need something that allows you to attach weight to the sides of the cage. I'll have the link to the dragon ledges that are down below that are designed for this. And so if you don't feel like messing around with the DIY, you can just go there. So the basic structure of the floating garden style is that top 9 inches. And these numbers are just more or less, okay? So none of these numbers are exact. You don't have to say, get out a ruler and say, 9 inches. No, you got a top there that is for basking, to be open, and for UVB. This is also open, so your misters are able to travel over your foliage and then fall down into the foliage. If you have all the foliage by the misters, they don't go anywhere. And you can see in the cages behind me, this is what it looks like. You see the top area is more or less clear, so they can get UVB, heat, and the misters can travel over the foliage. Then in the mid-level, this is the floating garden. This is where plants on both sides start to grow into each other. And what it does is it creates a little sanctuary, a leafy sanctuary for your chameleon to be able to hide in. Each chameleon has a different level of security and desire to hide away. And that changes throughout the day. Spearmint back here, he always comes out in the morning and just hangs out and says hello. And then during the day, he goes into the foliage. This is actually a very common chameleon schedule. They come out in the day, they bask, they warm up, and then they spend the day in the foliage. Often they'll come out during the evening and hunt around a little bit, but then they'll go back into the foliage and find a good place to sleep. Every chameleon is going to be different, but that is a common schedule that a chameleon keeps. Now, some chameleons will just sit up top the entire day and sleep there, and that's fine. What your job is to provide them with the options. It doesn't matter if they use them or not. It's just your job to provide the opportunity to hide away. And even if they don't hide behind the plants, usually This is a great clue for you to know that something is off if all of a sudden they start to use the plants. This could be an indication of feeling sick. When a chameleon starts feeling sick, they want to be protected and they don't feel as confident. So this can be an important behavioral clue for you. Any change in behavior is a clue of something going on. And by you providing different areas in the cage that have different temperatures, humidities, and different levels of security, you're going to be able to monitor their behavior because they have options to choose from. If they didn't have any options to choose from, there wouldn't be any different behaviors. Okay, so the middle is going to be filled with foliage and hiding places for them. And then the bottom of the cage, I usually leave, well, the 9 inches on the bottom, leave it clear. Yes, I'll have a branch that goes down, so if a chameleon's on the floor for whatever reason, they can easily get back up. But especially in the beginning, when I've got a new chameleon or I'm working with a beginner, I like the floor to be clear. I know I've been talking about bioactive substrates, and I will continue. I think that's an important direction for us to go in as a community. But when you're a beginner, having a plain plastic floor is an advantage because it allows you to be able to monitor the poop. How often are they pooping? What kind of poop consistency do we have? These are all windows into your chameleon's health. And especially when you are beginning, you need to get a feel for what certain things mean in regard to chameleon's health. And so this is the point where you need to start taking in all sorts of information. The poop frequency, poop consistency, that's a very important part of monitoring your chameleon's health. And if you're new to chameleons, I'll apologize ahead of time. You might be disturbed at how much we do with chameleon poop. If you're a beginner, we tell you to look at it. And if you're an advanced and working with wild-caught, you're going to be looking at it under a microscope. And if you look at any of the other episodes of this vlog, you'll see that I do a lot of showing what poop looks like when we're looking for parasites. So, just get used to it. And one more thing before we go into our 5 steps. This is a template. I have been using this template for over 10 years, and that is by design. I wanted my audience to be seeing this template over and over and over again until it became second nature, until they looked at the cage and they expected it to look this way. And they have proven to be able to create an effective home for your chameleon. But once you understand these steps and what they're for and what they do, you can apply it however you want to. And this is where you become the artist. You've learned the basics, and now it's time to put your personal spin on it. So here's the basics. Step 1, create your structure. And by that, I mean your structural branches. These are branches you're going to be attaching to the dragon ledges, and they are going to be what you connect all the other branches and pots in the cage. For structural branches, look for straight branches. Yeah, I love these branches that have character, that are bending all over the place. But when you're looking for structure, get as a nice, thick, straight branch. Now, when I say thick, I mean 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch in diameter. It doesn't have to be inches in diameter. 1/2 to 1/4 inch is fine. Now, when I put them in the cage, I'm going to create a hashtag shape with the dragon ledges. And so you can see how the 2 vertical branches lashed to the horizontal dragon ledges create a hashtag symbol. This creates a myriad of surfaces for you to branch off with branches and install potted plants. Now, to attach these branches, I use zip ties. Black zip ties have proven to be very effective in doing this. Now, I can't say I really love the look of them, but right now, for the basics, let's just go with the most functional way to attach the branches. Just make sure when you clip off the ends that it's a clean clip and there are no sharp edges. So once we have the hashtag shape on both sides of the cage, we're going to put in the perching branches. The perching branches are specifically chosen to be comfortable for chameleon feet. Perching branches are going to be in the diameter that the chameleon can get its foot around halfway to all the way. You will need at least 1 perching branch that is a specific distance away from the UVB light so you're getting the right UVB level and is the right distance from the heat bulb so the temperature's not too hot, not too cold. The second important perching branch is where they're going to sleep, and put this branch to where it's going to be behind potted plants. Think of this as their bedroom, where they can go to get away from it all. Now, the plants aren't in yet, but knowing where your perching branch is, that's going to help you know where to put the plants. Now, I said 2 perching branches, but in reality, you can put as many perching branches as you want. You only need a minimum of 2. But when you go to branching, you want to use as much of the cage space as possible. So don't be shy when it comes to branches, but realize one of the next steps is going to be putting in the network branches, which means putting branches in all diameters, going in all different directions all over the cage, in somewhat of a haphazard, random type placement, and that's just so the chameleon can access those corners of the cage. It doesn't mean that they're going to spend a whole lot of time, so it doesn't have to have that comfort aspect. And I suggest at this point, you only put in the most important perching branches because we want to put in the potted plants. And that is actually next. Step 3, install the pots where they need to go. Now, this is the method that I've used for all those years. You get 2 pots that are the same size. I attach one in the cage with zip ties. I mark off with a Sharpie where I need to drill. I drill a hole in. I zip tie it to the branches. And by the way, we live in 3-dimensional space. You will need to anchor this pot in 3 different places and not on the same axis. Once this is installed in the cage, it stays there and you put your plant in this pot. That way, this stays into the cage at all times and this, with the plant, goes in, and if you ever have to remove that plant because it died or you need to do maintenance on it or you want to replace it, whatever, you just pull it out. You do whatever you need to with this pot, change it out, put a different plant, whatever, and then put it back in. This has made my life so much easier. Now, the way I install these is I figure out at what level I want my plant. So I'll put my pot in the cage and start figuring out where it needs to go. And once I figure out where it needs to go, I usually have it up against the 2 vertical branches. And that way it gives me 2 different axes, and I create a 3rd one under the pot by putting in a cross piece. I just cut a piece of branch, a nice thick piece of branch, and I lash it across the 2 vertical branches, and this provides a nice place for my pot to rest. Drill holes, put a zip tie in, lash it tight, and it's not going anywhere. Now, the reason why you didn't want to get too crazy in the perching branch step is that you have to make sure that the top of the pot is left clear so you can put that other plant in and take it out when you need to. So this is the one thing to keep in mind when we go to the next step, which is the network branches, is keep the tops of the pots clear. So step 4 is the network branches. Here's the step that we want to use the branches with all that character, because the point of these branches is we want to fill space. Any area in the cage that's left empty air, the chameleon can't access. It can't use it. So we use network branches to go into that area and allow the chameleon to use it. Even though we see that area as, well, what's so special about that? The thing is, every corner of the cage has a different microclimate. It's a different distance away from the heat lamp, so it's going to be a different temperature. It'll be hit differently when the misters go off, when the fogger goes off. Your job is to create all these microclimates and access to them, and then let it be up to them to decide what they need at every hour of the day. Network branches can be attached to the structural branches, the perching branches, the dragon ledges. They can be attached everywhere. Now, the cage system that I have behind me that I am demonstrating on won't have as wild of network branches all over the place because they're with some chameleons that I am deparasitizing. And so it's very important in this particular case that none of the branches are above the other branches because I don't want the poop to bounce off of things on its way down to the bottom of the cage. But if you've got a captive hatched chameleon, you're not worrying about that so much. And so you can just put branches all over and give your chameleon a jungle gym to play in. And finally, step 5, put in your plants. The important thing about these plants is that they provide coverage. It's not good enough to get these little sprigs of plants that are just this little green crown on top of a pot. You need coverage. You need things that your chameleon can hide behind. And in all of this, your chameleon needs you to understand that they want to hide behind the plants. There is something that I call the picture box mistake, and that is where you look at this cage. It's a beautiful naturalistic cage. There's plants along the side and back, and you see the chameleon right there in the middle. But from the chameleon's perspective, there's no room to hide behind those plants. It looks beautiful when you look at it, but it's not functional. The chameleon needs to be able to hide behind the plants. And so that's why you see what I'm doing here. I am looking for pothos, Boston fern, spider plants, things that are big and bushy. And if you look back here, I look here, I can't find my chameleon. Obviously I open the door, I will be able to find him. But right now, he feels secure because I don't see him. Yes, he's in there somewhere and he can see me, but honestly, I don't know where he is. And that is the sign of a good chameleon cage design. The chameleon cage doesn't have to be packed from one side to the other with plants. In fact, that's a way to get dead plants because they don't get enough light. So more is not necessarily better, but you need to be strategic. I find a simple way to do this is that on one side of the cage, you have 2 pots, one that reaches up to about 9 inches below the top of the cage, just like you see back here. And the other one goes under, just like you see back here. The one under is not going to get enough light, so you want to be strategic and get a lower light plant. And then on the opposite side, you have at least 1 pot. Now, what this does is it creates a drier area over here. It creates a more humid and hiding area over on this side of the cage. And generally speaking, I like the denser foliage on the edge of the cage that has the hint. And generally speaking, I like the denser foliage to be on the side of the cage that has the hinges. That way, if I want to feed by putting crickets or something on the side of the cage to crawl up, I can easily do it by opening here, putting it up against the wall, and then closing it. I don't have to open the entire cage up. So those are 5 simple steps. There's really nothing complicated about, but the point where I see so many people fail is they don't provide security for their chameleon. They get plants that are so small that they're not offering any coverage, or they're placed in a way that the chameleon can't really use them. They need to be able to sleep. Just think about them sleeping behind. So the size of your chameleon when he's sleeping needs to be able to be behind the foliage. That's how much foliage you need. Now, after this, we talk about misting and fogging and heat and lights and all that kind of stuff. But with this basic floating garden style cage, you've got the foundation to effectively implement all those other parameters. Now, the magic of this floating garden approach is that it's really not a series of steps. It's an approach. And you can use this approach on screen cages. You can use this approach on hybrid cages. You can use this approach even on the high-end Arboreal XL from Custom Reptile Habitats. And if you look carefully, you can see that even in this high-end enclosure, I'm using the hashtag method. The branch anchors in there are different than the dragon ledges, but they do the same thing. And this demonstrates that whatever you do, as long as it functions in a way that allows you to lash things to the side of the cage, it will allow you to do the floating garden style. And so I present this to you. Please take it and give your chameleon an awesome life. Okay, folks, that's the vlog for this morning. Yes, we went over a little bit, but you know what? I tried to talk as fast as I could. I wanted to get this concept out in a video. And if you're new here, welcome to the Chameleon Academy. We have a lot of fun here, and we're dedicated to helping people be successful with chameleons. You're going to find that everyone here is unnaturally helpful. And that's because we consider you the future of our community. So come back, enjoy the videos, come to one of the live sessions and meet the people. I have 2 live sessions a week, one Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific and one Saturday at 12 noon Pacific. Those are live, interactive. You can come, you can ask questions. You can just hang out with the people in the chat and make friends. And there's also some value. If you need to buy some supplies, you can use the coupon code chameleon10 at thebiodude.com and get 10% off the items in your cart. So when you need to replace your UVB lights or get that Mist King, use the coupon code. That coupon code helps support this show, so it's a win-win-win. And if you're in the market for a high-end enclosure, This Arboreal XL enclosure is actually the Chameleon Academy line at Custom Reptile Habitats. The link to check this out is in the comments. All right, folks, it is wonderful spending this Saturday with you. Remember that there's a live session this afternoon at 12 noon Pacific where TC Houston, who coined the term small batch breeding, is going to come on and we can ask him questions because he's done it. He's done the small batch breeding. He's done the transition from being minimalistic into being naturalistic. He has taken the risk, he has sacrificed, and he has decided that the benefit is worth it. So this is a wonderful opportunity to talk to someone who's gone through the steps. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, oh my goodness, there is so much going on. Please join. Go ahead, watch some videos. You'll find we've got a vibrant community and we are working to move chameleon herpetoculture forward. And so I'm going to go ahead, get ready for this live chat. Take care of yourself, be excellent to each other, and I'll see you next time.